I recently had a powerful and eye-opening discussion with U.S. President Donald Trump, and I want to share exactly what we talked about, especially regarding the growing tensions between the United States and other countries. When we began, the focus was on the current state of the world. I asked him directly what he believes is causing the increasing conflicts between the U.S. and major global powers like China, Russia, and others. His response was very clear. He believes a lot of these issues come down to leadership and how America presents itself on the global stage. According to him, when the United States shows strength, economically, politically, and militarily, other countries are less likely to challenge it. But when leadership appears uncertain or inconsistent, it creates opportunities for rivals to push boundaries. He emphasized that during his time in office, his strategy was centered around America first, which he says forced other countries to take the U.S. more seriously. We also talked about the criticism he received, especially regarding his tough approach to international relations. I brought up the idea that some people believe his policies actually increased tensions, rather than reducing them. He pushed back on that strongly. He explained that sometimes tension is necessary to correct long-standing issues, particularly in trade. China was a major part of our discussion. He described the U.S.-China relationship as both economic and strategic. On one hand, he talked about trade imbalances and what he sees as unfair practices. On the other hand, he pointed out that China is aiming for global influence, and the U.S. needs to be very aware of that. Another interesting part of our conversation was about U.S. allies. I asked him about the strain in relationships with some European countries during his presidency. He told me that, in his view, he actually strengthened alliances by demanding fairness, especially when it came to defense spending. He believes partnerships should be balanced, not one-sided. What stood out to me most in this first part of our discussion was his consistent message. Strength leads to respect, and respect helps prevent bigger conflicts, whether people agree or disagree. That was clearly the foundation of his perspective. As our conversation continued, we moved into specific global crises, starting with the Middle East. I asked him about the situation with Iran and the decisions made during his presidency. He explained that withdrawing from the nuclear deal was, in his opinion, necessary because he believed the agreement was flawed. He described it as a deal that gave Iran financial relief without truly stopping their long-term ambitions. Instead, his strategy was to apply what he called maximum pressure, using sanctions and economic restrictions to limit Iran's influence. I challenged him on whether that approach increased the risk of conflict. He responded by saying that what might look like short-term tension can actually prevent bigger problems in the future. In his view, allowing issues to continue unchecked is more dangerous than confronting them early. We also talked about Russia, which he described as a complicated but important relationship. He said that dealing with a country like Russia requires both strength and communication. One thing he stressed was the importance of keeping dialogue open, even when tensions exist. According to him, a lack of communication can lead to misunderstandings and escalation. Then we moved on to North Korea, which was one of the most surprising parts of his presidency. I asked him about his meetings with Kim Jong-un and what he was trying to achieve. He told me his goal was simple: reduce the risk of war. He acknowledged that not everyone agreed with his approach, but he believes those meetings helped lower tensions at the time. He said that sometimes success in diplomacy isn't about immediate results, but about preventing something much worse from happening. As we went through these different regions, I started to notice a pattern in his thinking. His approach to global crises seems to follow three main ideas: apply pressure, maintain strength, and always leave the door open for negotiation. Whether it was Iran, Russia, or North Korea, he kept coming back to the same principle. You cannot afford to appear weak, but you also cannot completely shut down communication. In the final part of our discussion, I asked him about the future, specifically how the world can avoid larger conflicts, and what role the United States should play moving forward. He started by saying that the most important step is rebuilding strength. He talked about the need for a strong economy, a strong military, and strong leadership. According to him, when a country is respected, it reduces the chances of conflict. We also talked about the role of young people and the next generation. He said that young people have a lot to contribute, especially with new ideas and perspectives. However, He emphasized that understanding history is very important. In his words, leadership requires not just vision, but also awareness of how the world really works. Another interesting point we discussed was global cooperation. I asked whether the U.S. should focus more on working with other countries or acting independently. His answer was that both are necessary, but cooperation must be fair. He stressed that the U.S. should not carry an unfair share of global responsibility. We also touched on economic competition, which is becoming a major source of tension worldwide. He believes that clear rules and consistent enforcement are key to preventing competition from turning into conflict. If countries understand there are consequences for unfair actions, they are more likely to act responsibly. Toward the end, I asked him one final question: what advice he would give to current world leaders dealing with global crises today. His answer was straightforward: be strong, be smart, and act early. He believes that many global conflicts grow because leaders hesitate or fail to address problems in time. Walking away from that conversation, what stayed with me most was how consistent his perspective was across every topic. Whether discussing allies, rivals, or future risks, everything came back to strength, negotiation, and timing. And that's exactly why I wanted to share this discussion with you, so you can hear these insights and decide for yourself what they mean in today's world.